G'day and welcome back. We are doing a small mini series on property management. The last show that we had, show for want of a better word, we discussed how we use the word type to determine the property management services that we have. We looked at the type of owner you are, the type of property that we're looking at, the type of property manager, and the type of service that you're looking at. And there's a few tips that we put at the end of that video, and I'll put a link on that video in this video so that you can marry the two together. What we're going to talk about now is property management fairy tales, as I call it, and self-managing your property. This is the other side of the equation for those people who are considering doing it themselves, or maybe they don't even have access to a commercial property manager. Having a look at a couple of the fairy tales we've had, look, I've had some shockers. There's some great tenants, there's some wonderful landlords, and there's some shocking landlords and some shocking tenants. I've had stories where we had a really great building. It was fully let, totally renovated. The owner was actually a builder, took really good care of it, came up to me and says, "Peter, can you property manage my building?" And I thought, interesting. And I always say something that's unusual, it needs to be investigated. I said, yeah, well, what is it you're looking for? He says, I just need someone to take care of the day-to-day running. Let me know if there's any maintenance issues. I'll do the maintenance issues myself. I just want someone to be talking to the tenants instead of me. And that's a common reason to have a property manager, having somebody who is in between, so you don't break relationships that you're just quite comfortable to work with. All right, so, green-eyed me went over there and had a look at it and spoke with one of the tenants. Turns out to be his sister-in-law, and he wasn't getting on with his sister-in-law. And I'm sorry, she was a bit of a witch. So you watch this one, it'll probably go viral and everybody know who I'm talking to, but we'll keep things quiet. She was getting into the stage of really annoying the living daylights of other tenants. She would park a car and block them in so they couldn't get out. She commandeered common area and put up banisters and fences so those common areas couldn't be used, and she used them for her own businesses. She was behind in her rent. She wasn't going to pay any rent increase. And my poor landlord, I quickly realised why he wanted a property manager. So that was a fairy tale that was interesting. I've had shocking landlords, and unfortunately more than I'd like to work with. The property management role I went into, I inherited it, so this is why a lot of those clients were there. I wouldn't deal with them normally on a day-to-day basis. They had a lot of holes in their roof. They got to the stage, the drain pipes that go down the side of the building were vanished, so every time it rained it just poured down the side of the building. We had issues in that sort of space. They had a large steel sliding door. It was a distribution hub, and we said that door's not looking real good, and the tenant was saying, it squeaks, it creaks. We try to use it. The only time we use it is at the end of the day we lock it up. Turned out they went to lock it up one day and the door fell off. It just sort of broke off its hinge and went kapunk. Almost destroyed a car, almost killed a person. I'm talking solid steel, 12, 15 feet tall, 20 feet wide, massive sort of stuff. It just got into a whole lot of mess. That was not a good landlord, and they really did get into some serious trouble along those sort of spaces. Other ones I've got, had another client, was happily on holidays. Peter, can you take over our property management? It's just a simple shed. And I was also, why is that? Okay, we signed them up, organised it. Went out there, that landlord was another one. They had a tenant who was already 3 months in arrears, wasn't going to pay anything until the property was updated. There used to be electricity to the external bathroom building. It was a Besser block building, but that had gone down. The landlord wasn't going to pay to get that redone. The landlord said, we've been there 20 years. We just use torches in winter. That sort of type mentality. Just sit there and go, oh, really? What's mankind coming to? So there's a lot of fairy tales and bad stories and shockers that we had. Rain is always a big one. We had a building that the landlord kept thinking, yeah, I'll get that guttering fixed one day. And this was like a 5-story office building. And sure enough, we had a big downpour one day, and it totally wiped out the top floor and pretty well did half the fourth floor that they're on. It's just a mess. These are things that you have to have a look at. So if you're a building owner, take care of your building and working along those lines. If you're looking to manage your own building, that's fine. There's a few things you need to be aware of. The idea that a property manager will give you due diligence, it can be a bit of a furphy. A lot of property managers, a lot of real estate agents, I might go back a step. There's a reason I don't do property management. The folklore, fairy tale, is that property management is a lucrative market and real estate agents make a lot of money from it. No, it just doesn't actually work that way. The margins are small, they got percentages, it's a nice regular income, but the real reason why most property managers or the real estate agents have the property manager is because when the owner goes to sell the property, they hope that they go back to them and say, hey, by the way, I want to sell, and they've got the listing. The reality is most property managers, and I'm talking, 60-70% of them, do such a bad job that agency is the last place an owner is going to go looking for you to list and sell their property. So a lot of them will be losing money. I've had stories. I had a real estate agent principal tell me he was so proud that he now got to the stage where every property manager he had 200 properties under their control. It's a fantastically efficient system. And I thought to myself, well, if you get 2 phone calls, that's half an hour. You got to do an inspection 3 times a year, 4 times a year. It just did not add up. Those property managers were absolutely wrung ragged. Like the old tea towel that's wrung out of water. It's not a lucrative business by all. So when you look at either getting a property manager or doing it yourself, factor in that they don't actually make a lot of money. It's a darn difficult job. The property management job itself is also very difficult, so recognize that there's a lot of turnover in that industry. Now, if you are at the stage where you're a sophisticated investor and you have either a simple building or your building and you tenant very well, and it may be something that you've got a tenant there, you've had them for the last 3 years and everything's great, you've got a good relationship, well, why do you need a property manager? These are things that you need to have a look at. You can have a look at negotiating particular service fees. So you say, I don't need the whole lot, similar to my client who was a builder. He just wants rent collected and the sister-in-law taken care of. So you can manage that down with a fee on that. If you want to do it yourself, that's fine as well. So hints that I would recommend to you: make sure you know your building. Make sure you go and visit it regularly. Every 3 months, every 6 months as an absolute minimum. Set aside what I call a sinking fund. So every time you get rent, put 10% aside and chuck it in a bank account so that you've got money to pay for repairs. You will find that you will be much happier if you get a repair bill knowing that you've already got the money set aside. And particularly for bigger sets of maintenance, like if you're looking at painting buildings, some of these things, like the building that I live in, it was 60 grand to get that painted. It wasn't an issue for us because we've been saving up in a sinking fund and took care of it. Good quality job. We don't need to do that for the next 10-15 years to run along those lines. Be across compliance. There's increasing compliance, and look, Australia is like so many other countries in the world. The governments just make it harder and harder because people continue to do the wrong thing. So industries are constantly changed. Some industries are shut down. There's all sorts of things found out. Things like carcinogenic products are an increasing range of legislation. You can have asbestos registers in place. You can have to change your work processes for things like silicosis, where everything now needs to be done with wet flooring and no dust in those facilities. You will increasingly have smoke detection and fire detection services. So if you are going to do your own management, make sure you get those fire There goes my reminders. I'm supposed to be elsewhere. Life's like that. Have a look at getting the fire extinguishers and your fire hoses constantly updated, and your emergency lighting, make sure they're up to date. Recognize that you're always going to get inspectors from council looking at the business as well as the building, so make sure your tenant is up to speed with their legislation and their registrations. Have a checklist, and each month go through the checklist and say, all right, well, we know that their food safe certificate is due this month. Make sure that you ring a tenant. How are you going? Have you got your food safe certificate? Sometimes they may well have forgotten about it, but most businesses will appreciate the fact that you're checking out and looking out for them. The upside of doing your own property management, it can be quite fulfilling. It can give you a good sense of ownership and pride as you're looking after your building. It can be fun because you really get to know your tenant, and you can go through the ups and downs together. You will get early warnings of times when there's issues. The landlords who got through COVID pretty well were the ones that already had good relationships with their tenants. It wasn't a mystery when, once again, legislation came in and says that you can't chase up back rent. The management of having their own building and being across that tenant definitely paid well for them in those sort of aspects. That's probably it. It's be a short video, but like I said, married it to the property management side. Don't be too scared to be your own property manager. It's not an irreversible decision. You have a go at it. If it works for you, great. If it doesn't, all right, dip in some money, or as is increasing the trend, add the property management fees to your rent at your next rent review. Rent reviews make sure that you do that with your tenants. One of the things, the biggest trap I find with people who own their own properties is when the lease is due, they just say, oh, Fred's fine, we'll just do it a month by month and keep going. Not a good look. You need to have proper leases in place with proper options in place. You need to have proper rent reviews. You need to have your CPI increases. If you can't be strong enough to negotiate that with your tenant, then get someone who can. Even if it's a solicitor, if it's a property manager, even if it's somebody else who's involved in that complex or that building, maybe you've got a building manager or something in those sort of brackets. That is the biggest one, because when it comes time to selling your property, if you don't have those things in place, you're not going to get top dollar, and you're going to be sitting there saying, gee whiz, I should have just spent $50 a month and had someone do these sort of type things for me. Like I keep telling people, don't sweat the small stuff. If it costs you $50 to get it done and you're going to make $50 million later on, don't worry about it. All right, that's it for this week. Enjoy yourselves, and I'll take care. God bless, and catch you next Tuesday.